Hey guys, it's Linux Next here, and in today's video, I wanted to go over kind of a series that I'm thinking of doing, and this is going to be the first part of this series, which is going to be basically teaching just new users how to use a Linux desktop environment, if it's like any type of Linux distro, basically ones that use KDE Plasma for the most part, but I want to do these series of where I teach how to use a certain piece of software, or alternatives to the software that people use on Windows. And so this first part of the video is going to be about the desktop experience and setting that up so then you are ready to actually start using your computer on Linux. So like I said before, I would want you to use KDE Plasma, as that's what I'm going to be showing for the most part. So any type of Linux distro, either it be Fedora, Arch, an Arch-based distro, a Fedora-based distro like Nobara, or maybe even like Ubuntu example, or even some other ones that use KDE Plasma. So one of the first things that you would want to do when setting up KDE Plasma on your desktop is, well, configuring the panel, because there's a ton of customization that you can do on the panel. You can add multiple panels, you can do all types of different things. So one of the basic things is you can just right click on this panel right here, and we can go into the edit mode. And what we have here is we have a top bar up here where we can add widgets, we can add a new panel, and then when we do add a new panel, we have an application menu bar, a default panel, and an empty panel. So of course, empty just means that there's going to be no widgets or apps on the panel. A default panel, which is actually pretty normal, I would say, which brings up basically what you have opened and then has a couple things pinned, maybe like your browser here. So as we can see here, we have this big fat widget with tons of things that we can do on the panel. We can set the position, so we do here, we can put it above, or we can put it on the side, or we can do it on the other side as well. So you can put it really wherever you want. I'm gonna put it on the bottom, as that is where I like to put my panel. And then we can change the alignment. So we can stick basically everything to the left. It even shows a little like presentation of what it will look like. So you see alignment goes to the far left, and then we got center and then right. So I'm gonna just leave it on center so everything looks nice and centered. It's not being forced to the left. And then we have a width here, so we can do fit content. So if you want to have a dock that is in the middle, this looks quite okay, I guess. Not for me personally, but it does look nice when you have like a nice wallpaper, for example. But when you do like maximize like applications, for example, if I maximize this, I don't really like how there's black bars here, but that's like a personal choice thing. So some people do like it this way, and that's perfectly fine. And then I would probably just do fill width. And of course, you can do custom as well. I personally am not going to do that. That was kind of like the old way before Plasma 6 came out, but I'm going to do fill width. And then we have visibility. So we can do always visible, we can do auto hide, dodge windows, or windows go below. And then we can do the opacity, which is adaptive, opaque, and translucent. So we can do full translucent, which doesn't seem to do that much. And then we can I usually just leave it on adaptive. And then the last one is floating. So we can, have it not floating. I know a lot of people don't like to have the panel floating at all. They like to just have it not floating. I personally do like it floating. And then the last thing is we can change the height of it, so we can make it bigger. So if you're I don't know, maybe your eyesight's really bad, or you just want your icons to be really big, you can definitely do that. And we got some other things here where we can like add a widget, so then it'll bring up this. So we can add, for example, we can add like Bluetooth here. So now there's like a Bluetooth toggle. I personally don't really usually add extra widgets because everything's already there for you in the default panel. So the next thing is, well, how would you change your wallpaper? Now this is a very noob question, but I think for new users, they might be a bit confused of where to go. But the basic way of doing it is we can just right click and we can go configure desktop and wallpaper, very similar to how Windows does it. And then the other way is we can go to our settings, and then we can go to wallpaper. And this option is only available on the Plasma 6 version. So if you're not on Plasma 6, this won't be here. You'll only have the right click option, which will bring up this. And we can add new wallpapers. So we can go into here, we can add a random wallpaper like this, for example, and we can set that as a wallpaper. Very nice. A meme that's been zoomed in, very cool. And if you want to, you can change the wallpaper type. So you can do like a plain color if you want to. You can do a slideshow. You can even add these other ones that are here, which don't seem to work because they're probably not installed properly. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ones you can do. You can also do like picture of the day, choose your provider. So you can choose NASA, and it'll just grab NASA pictures of that day. But for me, I just use image, and then that is going to be the wallpaper section. Now, not just custom customizing your wallpaper, but this is where you can customize the icon. So we can change the icon size if we want to. We can make it go descending. So when we have more icons, it will go down, similar to how Windows does it, but I like it actually to go across. We can also lock it in place. And then, like I said, you can change the icon size. Look at there, it goes bigger and bigger. I'm just going to leave it on the default one because that's a nice size. And you can change like the label width, the text lines. There's a bunch of different things that we can do here with the icons. Now on KDE Plasma, we do have the settings icon, which I just showed before. So one of the first things that we can do is go to our display and monitor, where we can change our monitors, because it's one of the things that I think a lot of people on Windows, they either go to their control panel of, like, for example, NVIDIA's control panel or AMD's control panel. I don't know if AMD's control panel on Windows lets you change your monitor settings, but on Linux usually it likes to have things integrated already into the settings and nowhere else. So basically you just go to the Plasma settings or to GNOME settings and you'll just go to the display and monitor section, and this is where we can change a bunch of different things like the refresh rate, like fractional scaling, or the adaptive sync, which is VRR. If you don't know what that is, that's just FreeSync. I have a monitor that has FreeSync Premium, and I would definitely check that your monitor has FreeSync Premium turned on, as I know some other users have had issues where like adaptive sync has problems. It's because the monitor doesn't actually have FreeSync turned on properly. That was one user that had that problem and he didn't have it turned on. So I would definitely check that. And then you can change this to automatic. And what automatic does is that when your game is full screen, it will turn on the FreeSync for you. And then you can set it to always if you want to always set it as FreeSync to be enabled, which I wouldn't recommend that, as certain videos that you may watch in your browser may not look okay when you're watching it. It may look a bit weird, or your monitor may start to flicker because the video's FPS is really low, maybe like 30 or 20 FPS. So that's where VR can have issues. So that's why you should just leave it on automatic, in my opinion. You can also enable HDR, and this will bring up some SDR brightness and then the SDR color intensity. And if you really want to get like technical with like colors, for example, they do offer different ICC color profiles. So where we can change the color of your monitor and make it look a bit more accurate or less accurate if you want that to be, I guess. But I usually don't muck around with that stuff. It's already on a pretty alright sRGB, in my opinion, for my monitor. And then the legacy applications X11 apply scaling themselves, which just means that the applications that are running in X Wayland mode, they will apply scaling themselves to those applications. It even says here, legacy applications that support scaling will use it and look crisp. However, those that don't will not be scaled at all. So for example, if you have like Steam, that won't scale itself because of some setting that Steam hasn't enabled properly. So you have to like do that manually. But for the majority of X Wayland applications, they should scale themselves. But if they don't, you can do scaled by system, which means all legacy applications will be scaled by the system to the correct size. However, they will always look slightly blurry. That's one problem, is if you do that, then those applications may look a bit blurry. So I would just leave it on the default one, which is the apply scaling themselves. Now, as we can see here, you probably already noticed there's a bunch of other things in here, like we can configure our sound, which I'll talk about that a bit later. You can do also like a drawing tablet. So if you have a type of drawing tablet, you should be able to see it in here and muck around with the stylus, and it should pick it up. And then also like game controller, where you can plug in like either a controller or maybe even a wireless dongle, and that should be able to pick it up in like X input mode. We can also go into the mouse and touchpad settings. So if you do have a laptop, you can configure your touchpad, the screen edges. So usually by default, the top left one has an action, but I have it to no action. And then we also have, the mouse. So we can configure our mouse point acceleration. Mine picks up my keyboard for some reason, but here's actually my wireless receiver, which is the Lamzu Atlantis. So I've set the point acceleration to none. So if you want to have your acceleration to none, so when you play FPS games, you're more accurate when it comes to aiming, then I would definitely set this to none. And then you can also change, the pointer speed, the scrolling speed, etc. Now in KDE Plasma, there is a bunch of theming that we can do to KDE Plasma. And if we go look at this global theme here, we are using the Breeze Dark one, which is the default Breeze theme that KDE Plasma maintains. And this is just the dark version. We can also go individually, so we can change certain things individually, like the colors, the application style, icons. And this is where we can also configure nightlight. So if you want to have a nightlight turned on your monitor, you can easily do that. You can even set it to a current location or a manual location or custom times or always on nightlight. like. So I would say if you want a good experience with KDE Plasma, I would just use the default Breeze theme, as when you start to customize Plasma, it kind of gets a bit glitchy sometimes if you have too much. So you can definitely use like a custom icon pack if you want to, but I wouldn't really go and muck around with the application style or Plasma style that much if you don't want weird things happening to your desktop. Just stick with the default Breeze theme. Of course, you can customize it by all means, but I'm just giving you a warning that like if you do start doing that stuff, it can become a bit unstable. Now on Windows, usually you would just grab like a .exe off a random website. For example, if you wanted to get like OBS Studio, Discord, a browser, Steam, Spotify, you would usually just go on a website to go download that .exe for that computer, and then you would just launch it and install it. Well, on Linux, we actually do it kind of a really different way, and it's probably a lot better, I would say, and it's a lot faster when it comes to grabbing applications. And this is where we have all different types of different package managers, for example. So usually you'll have your system package, which is going to be either like a .rpm or a .debian package. Those are for .rpm is for Fedora, and then .debian is for Debian-based distros. So also Ubuntu also uses .debian, or Linux Mint, all those derivatives can use .debian. And then for Fedora with .rpm, you can use Nabora as well. And then for Arch, you would just use, usually we use Pacman to build your packages or to grab them from the Arch repository. And then we also have Flatpak, which is a containerized package manager, which is probably the main way of getting packages these days, and it's probably the safest way, unless you know, a certain package is like verified to be maintained on that repository. Then you should be just getting it from Flatpak, because usually the Flatpak will be a verified maintainer of that package. So for example, like Discord is actually officially maintained on the FLATHUB repository, and then same goes for like OBS Studio, or even just little things like a resource monitor for checking out your processes, stuff like that, or bottles, for example. That's a really good maintained FLATHUB package. So then, you know, like there is certain package managers. Well, where do you get these? Well, usually when you install a distro, it has all these repositories set up for you, including the FLATHUB repository. And then usually what you do is you go to a front-end GUI store that is used on the desktop environment. So for me, I have Discover installed, which is for grabbing my FLATHUB and Flat packages. But you should also have, for example, like the GNOME software store. That is one that is used a lot on GNOME-based distros. And then what you do here is you can just search for any package that you want, really. You can just go to, for example, like GIMP, for example, and we can just pick the one here, which is FLATHUB, and then we can just click install, and then after it's done, you can just click launch, and the application will launch for you, as you can see here. Now, what I said before was like Flatpak is like containerized. So that means that it has these set permissions, and it makes it a lot more secure. So one of the problems that you may arise when you use a specific package and you want that package to see something in your, let's say, root directory or home directory, and it doesn't have access to that, you might be a bit confused as to why it doesn't have access to that. And that's why, because Flatpak is containerized. So what we can do is we can just grab an application like FlatSeal, for example. And this is basically a way to change permissions on a Flatpak package. So for example, here's OBS Studio. I've disabled Wayland access so that it forces it into X Wayland mode, so then I can get things like a browser doc, because browser docs don't work on Wayland. Or for example, with bottles, if we scroll down here, I think I added here my extra drives that are mounted so that bottles can see those drives, because without these permissions, it can't see those drives, which brings in a lot of like security pluses. But like, for example, I wanted to install a game on my games drive, so I had to add the directory /games, and then you would just relaunch the application, and then bottles can actually see that drive. So one of the last things I'll talk about with package managers is plugins on Flatpak. And what these are is basically similar to like if you installed a plugin in OBS Studio and to give you a certain feature on Windows, where you would just drop the plugin in the folder and then you launch OBS and you can use that plugin, something like OBS NDI. Well, on Linux, we can just easily go to here and we can just install this plugin, which is the NDI plugin, to give you a plugin on OBS so you can stream or connect to a different computer in your like local network, and you easily can just, you know, click install from FLATHUB, and then if I relaunched OBS Studio, I would have the OBS NDI plugin installed. Now, for the majority of people, when it comes to updating Linux, it's pretty easy. You can just go to a GUI store on the majority of distros that you use, or there'll be a specific upgrade package that you can launch to upgrade. So for example, on on like Zorian OS that has a specific updater application that you can just launch and it will check for updates. But for example, if you're on like Fedora, you would just launch either the GNOME software app, or you would just launch the Discover app if you're on the KDE Plasma spin. So if like for here, you would just go to the update section, hit refresh, and then it would just check for updates. Now for me, it's only going to check for Flatpak updates because Arch, it doesn't set up well with the Discover. It's only for Flatpak. So for me, I would actually either go into my terminal and I would just do paru, and then it would just check for updates, or I can actually launch a GUI application, which I do have a update here, which seems to be the new KDE Plasma update and another Mesa update. So that's really good to see. But usually I would actually just go to this GUI application, which is called Harmac, which I don't use that much as it's kind of only made for Manjaro, but it is a nice GUI application if I wanted to do updates through here. As you can see, here's the updates that were on this terminal, and now they're on the Harmac store. And after that's done updating, usually you just restart your computer and those updates will be installed. And that seems to be a lot easier, I would say, when it comes to updating both applications and system packages for you. One of the other things with Linux is, if you want to check your processes on a system monitor application, if you wanted to, which ones would you use necessarily? Well, there's ones that are pre-installed on your Linux distros usually. For example, like KDE Plasma has the system monitor. Now I won't launch this because it's going to show my IP address, but there is some other ones that you can choose from, like resources, for example. I've been using this one a lot lately. It's basically the main one that I use, and it's in GTK, so it looks very nice with the water theme over it. And you can check all types of different things. So like, for example, applications, which puts it into groups for you easily, or we can go individually into processes. So if you want to look really in deep of what processes are spawned here, this is a pretty easy way of doing that. And you can also check out your processor, which you can turn on the logical CPU, so it can show all of the cores for you, which looks very nice and easy to understand, I would say. And then also like memory, for example, that's something you can check out. For example, I got my swamp, and then we got my memory, and then also you can check out your GPU. So you can see here we are encoding on OBS right now, so it is showing that. But there is another application that we can look at for monitoring stuff, which is Mission Center. That's a really good application for checking it out, and it's actually very similar to Windows. It just looks very similar, even though it's based in GTK. It does look really nice, and it's very similar with its own like little left side, and it's also got like similar theme to Windows. But personally, I don't use this one anymore because sometimes like closing applications does take a little bit, so resources does a better job, I would say. But it is a good system monitor. Now you may be thinking, what if I have a gaming mouse? How the hell do I configure that on Linux, for example? Because it'd be pretty easy to do it on Windows. You would just grab the manufacturer's like GUI application to configure the mouse. So how would you do it on Linux? Well, there's a couple different ways. For example, if you want to do it with Logitech mouses, I used to use SOLAAR on my G305. This is a very easy application to use. If we do install it here, it is using an old image here. This looks really old, but it is better because it does base off the theme that you are using on your system. So for me, it would be Breeze. As you can see here, SOLAAR is now installed and we can easily launch it. And if I do plug in a Logitech device right now, it should be able to see it. So you can see here, we do have a G303 Shroud Edition mouse, which does detect it properly. If I do plug it in, we turn it on. As you can see, it instantly found it. And we can change a couple different things here. We can change like the scroll direction, the scroll wheel resolution, the scroll wheel diversion, enable onboard profile, which controls report rate, sensitivity, and button actions. So you can switch to like different profiles if you want to. And if you do have a profile set on the mouse, it will carry over to Linux. So don't worry about that. If it's something you're concerned about, it will not do that. And it shows like, your battery level, the wireless link, and that's about it, I would say. You can't like do any shortcuts. I don't think you can do that stuff. Usually you would do that like in apps individually, but that is just one app that you can use for Logitech mouses. Now, the other one that we can configure mouses on is called Pipe, which is a pretty nice little project that has been going on for quite a while now, and it does still get updated rather regularly. It hasn't been updated in a while because of like maintainers and stuff not really being there to update the application, but it still does support a lot of different mouses. If we do go to the Piper website, we can look at the list of mouses that are supported under Linux. We can go to the libret tag device files, and it should show us all the mouses. Yep, we can see all the mouses here that it does support. So I would definitely look at this. I'll leave it in the link below so you can see if your mouse is supported. So as you can see here, my G303 Shroud device is supported. So if we do launch it here, which we do have it installed. So it seems for me that my G303 Shroud doesn't work on Piper properly. It doesn't detect it, which is probably something to do with how just the number ID of the mouse isn't the correct one that is actually on Piper. But this app does work most of the time if you do have a supported mouse. So I would definitely try this application out. And if it does work, you can have a look at the screenshots here of what you can do. You actually can configure different clicks on the button of what they should do. You can reconfigure that, and you can also change like the DPI, the report rate, and then also change the LEDs on it. And the last one I will recommend is if you have a Razer device, either it be a keyboard or a Razer mouse, I would actually try and install OpenRAZER, as this supports a lot of different Razer devices, all the way up to like some of the newest stuff gets supported, and it seems like it's really in like mostly like heavy development. Like it gets maintained really well with supporting these devices. So for me, like I have a Razer Death Adder V2, and it actually does work with OpenRAZER, and it is pretty easy to install. You can see here the officially supported repositories. So you can do Debian, Fedora, OpenSUSE, Ubuntu, which includes all the derivatives, or you can do the community supported one. So if I'm on Arch Linux, which I am, I can just do the direction here, which would be to install it probably from the official repositories. Yes, so it is on the official repository. So if you're on Arch, you can actually just easily grab this by going into your terminal and just doing like haru OpenRAZER Damien, and then that would install it really easy. And then after it's installed, you can install a GUI application, which I'm pretty sure there is one available called RAZERGENIE, and this is where you can configure those Razer devices, which it is a pretty simple Qt based application for using that Damien to customize your Razer devices. So the next thing that we can do is mounting our drives to Linux. How easy is it to do that from usually doing it from Windows? Well, it is really easy, I would say. We can just use any like GUI application for mounting. So this one is the KDE Partition Manager, and usually I like to mount my drives in /games and /extra games, which is in the root directory. When we launch KDE Partition Manager, you can just go to any drive and we can just easily do edit mount point. Now, identify by UUID, that's what I would use, and then we can select the path here, and we can have a bunch of different options here. Usually I don't use any of these options because I want to let it auto mount. I don't want it to be a read only. And so I put it in /games. We can also do select, and then we can do individually where we want to mount it. So if you want to mount it in your home drive, you can just do that. And one of the things is when you do mount a drive, imagine the drive gets mounted as a folder path. So it would just be /games. So it would just be a folder called games. That's basically the only way of explaining it, I would say. And then after that's done, we can just click OK and then save the changes to the /etc/f to stab. So when you boot up the computer, it knows where to mount that drive, and it can actually auto mount it for you. So you may be wondering if you want to back up your system maybe. So if something goes wrong on Linux, you can easily just hop back on that specific version of Linux that you were on at that date and then have all your stuff restored for you. Well, what we can do is use a thing called snapshots, which works only with BTRFS. We can use rsync as well. So if you're on like ext4, that's what you would use, as BTRFS is only available for snapshot. But basically, yeah, we just select BTRFS for the snapshot. We go next, and then we choose the drive that we want to back up on this. So we do this one, and then we can choose the levels of like how many times it wants to create a backup for us. So we're going to do daily, keep 5. You can customize this as much as you want. And then we go next. We can also include the at home sub volume. So I'm going to do that, and then we can go finish. So there you go. Well, now we can create a snapshot, which does it really easily. And as you can see, we've created a snapshot. So maybe if you muck something up on your Linux distro and you want to hop back to that certain point of that snapshot, you can easily just hop into the terminal and then launch snapshot through the terminal and then select that snapshot, and then it will restore it, and you just easily reboot, and then that's it, it's restored. So I've done this plenty of times before when I've been trying to learn Arch, and I've like mucked it up a couple times, either through doing certain changes to root directory stuff which I shouldn't have been, or editing specific config files which I should have not been doing, and that mucked it up, and I was able to just hop back to the snapshot snapshot that was created yesterday. Bro, the last thing is that on Linux, when you use a specific hardware, for example, if you use AMD as your GPU, you don't need to install your drivers, as your drivers are already pre-installed for you. If you're on NVIDIA, then there is specific distros that will install the NVIDIA driver for you, like out of the gate. But sometimes distro may not include it. Like if you do install an Arch-based distro, or if you just install Arch, it's not going to install the NVIDIA drivers for you, and you will have to do it manually. But if you're on AMD or Intel, you will have your drivers pre-installed because it's installed in the kernel, and then it will have a user space driver as well on top of that. So like for me, we use Mesa for AMD and Intel as well, and then inside of Mesa, you would use like RADV for playing your games, or you would use like what's it called, ANC, I think it's called, or ANV for the Intel side of GPUs. And I would say that's about it for the desktop side of things. Of course, last one you could say is like controlling your audio. So if you want to switch around with different audio devices, that's pretty easy to do. You can just go to your settings and go to sound. I was going to do a bit of a more of a deep dive if you have like surround sound, how to configure that, but I guess I'll do that in a separate video. So if you guys did enjoy this video for this week, I would definitely give it a like, and you can definitely subscribe to the channel. That's perfectly fine if you want to do that. If you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine also. And thank you to my supporters. I'll set up a screenshot now of them. Thank you for supporting me. You can definitely become a supporter. I did actually lower the price recently to like $1.40 or something, because it doesn't bring very much value to being a supporter on the channel, except just, you know, giving me money. I don't give anything back to you guys really. I just make videos, but I do appreciate when people are being a supporter. So thank you. And I will see you guys in the next video. And hopefully there'll be a part 2 of how to set up games on Linux desktop. I always do game tutorial videos, so I'll probably do that at some point as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.